2, Keith Dias.
Here.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Here.
Division 4, Justin Lane. Division 5, Robert Perris.
Here.
Division 6, Marlon Barnes.
Here.
Division 7, Jerry Van Dam.
Here.
Wayne Chisholm.
Here.
Lee McElhaney.
Here.
And Holly Hughes present.
Thank you. Item 4, period open to the public. If anybody in the audience would like to address the board on any item that is not on the agenda, please feel free to do so now. Item 5, new business, communications for information and/or action. My very good friend, Dr. Eugene Nebeker, has requested an opportunity to make a presentation to our board tonight on the subject of fugitive dust and the adjudication.
Good evening, President Dias, board members and staff. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. And can everybody hear me okay? Is there anybody here that would prefer not to hear me? Do we have a sergeant in arms here?
I'll serve.
I'm here today because some folks wanted me to address you about some problems with adjudication. And for those of you that don't know me, my family's been farming up here on the same property for 99 years. I was part of the Adjudication Technical Committee years ago, and I can't say anything about what other people said in the committee because there's confidentiality problems. So anything I say are maybe my own comments or things that are public. And I was on the fugitive dust scoping committee meetings that started 3 years ago. The reason I'm talking about fugitive dust, it has a huge impact on this adjudication. And most of the people don't even know what it was. And the problems with fugitive dust, and a lot of you people lived in Antelope Valley for a long time and are well aware of this. They have particulates that blow, and traffic accidents and valley fever. And here's an example of the particulates, and I think everybody has seen stuff like that if you live in the valley. And here's an example of a 16-car traffic accident that happened. And you've seen this in the Antelope Valley press time and time again through the years. The purpose of our fugitive dust scoping meetings are to define the problems, to quantify the problems in terms of how many deaths or whatever, and to develop a working relationship with the stakeholders and affected parties. We've had a total of about 38 various attendees from different public agencies at our meetings, and I think that they've passed out for you to look at a list of some of them. We've had really terrific political support. The majority leader of the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, has been really helpful, and in particular, Senator Scott Wilkes. Our outreach and committee has used Senator Wilkes' office to meet every month or 6 weeks, something like that. And Assemblyman Town Lackey, I don't want to forget about him. He's been really terrific. We have primarily 4 subcommittees: outreach and awareness, and the purpose of this committee is to let the people and the medical doctors know what valley fever is. The big problem with valley fever is historically people, including the physicians, have not known what it is and how to treat it. And so people get really bad. And if you get really bad, it's very, very hard to treat. And right now this committee is involved in CME programs, which is continuing medication, continued medical education. And they're going around to the hospitals with experts and talk about this. Kids Ag Day, they're trying to educate kids as to what the symptoms are. See, the symptoms are a really bad cold or really strong flu, and you have those kind of problems. And then once a year we have a Valley Fever Walk to educate people around Apollo Park as to what the issues are. And every year we have a Valley Fever seminar at the High Desert Hospital. And of course at the AV Fair we've had a booth every year. And also, and these other things are pretty much self-explanatory, we're supporting vaccine development as well as Senator from the state. You know, that's something that may take a long, long time to develop. And then we have a program of revegetating the University of California at Riverside, revegetating the raw land and the land that's had the brush and all that sort of stuff blowing off of it. And that's difficult, especially in a time that we're not getting much rain. And then we're dealing with man-caused sources of fugitive dust, and that's kind of the impetus of my being here today. And we have the adjudication area plan. I'm not going to spend much time on the area plan, but the Department of Public Works is really concerned about that, because they're afraid instead of enforcing dust suppression, people are going to say, hell, the value of my property is not worth doing any mitigation, we're just going to abandon it. That's their big concern. But I don't, except for those comments, I don't feel on. And then the adjudication, we're very much concerned about all this water from the adjudication is going to be turned off. It's probably going to be over 100,000 acre-feet a year, and I'll get into the impacts of that a little more later. Now the problem with Antelope Valley and why this is such a really tough situation is it's ideal for blowing dust and sand. It's ideal for valley fever because it has frequent and high winds. Soils are highly erodible in most places, and the soils are endemic for valley fever fungus. That doesn't mean it's epidemic, it means endemic. The valley fever fungus is all over the place. Now the damages that are shown in the settlement document is there's a whole bunch of folks that have been defaulted and they have no right to produce groundwater. Over 65,000 vacant land parcels have no right to produce groundwater. And then 3,172 got less water in the adjudication than they historically have used. And of course, as you know, from Gary, I think, loud and clear, farmers were cut back, most of them to less than 50% of their historical groundwater pumping. So you can look like a lot of raw land is going to be created. And the thing that surprised me, the people that really brought the suit, LA County Waterworks and a variety of other public water suppliers, have been cut down in their water use, according to the calculations I've seen, to only 10 or 12% of their historical use. In other words, their obligation to serve their customers, only 10 or 12% can come from the groundwater rights. And see, I'm supporting my own interest, and I'd like more water. I'd like my farmers to like more water. I'd like the public to like more water, and I'd like the public water suppliers to like to get more water. Because then I think there's enough water there to do that, and I think the valley would be much healthier for that. Now, it looks like from the analysis of the Antelope Valley Water Resources Conservation District, as well as the United States Department of Agriculture National Resources Conservation District, that there's going to be another, if we go fully down to the front down, there's going to be another 30,000 acres of blowing dust and sand. And that's due to the good work of Hudson Minshaw of the United States Department of Agriculture and Rich Campbell of the Antelope Valley Resources Conservation District. Now the current value of 20,000 acres comes from aerial photographs and observation on the ground. Now the interesting thing is we wanted to quantify these results in our committee. That's why we have these things called scoping meetings. And we've had, according to your list there that was handed out, there's probably about 38 agencies that attended our meeting. And Dr. Ben Schwartz, the acting director of the Acute Communicable Disease Control for Los Angeles County Department of Public Health, testimony indicated that he estimates, based on the agency's existing data, that there's going to be an extra, as I say, 30,000 acres of blowing dust and sand, and that's going to amount to, they estimate from their historical data that exists now, 15 deaths per year. That's not 15 deaths in 1 year or 15 deaths all over, it's 15 deaths every year. Now, I think these estimates are estimates, and a lot of these people that have done these estimates think it may be more, and some think it could be less. But it doesn't matter how much it is in quantification. It's a hell of a big problem. It's a hell of a big problem. Some people say, Gene, well, maybe we can just, and I told some of you this, I said, well, Gene, maybe we can just overlook this like Ford Motor Company did with their burning gas tank issue years ago. And I said, well, look at it this way. Suppose ISIS came in and bumped off an AMPM every year. What would you think? And they say, oh, yeah, well, I get it, I get it. This whole thing is really hard to accept. I mean, if we had a huge problem that we knew was real, we just have to suck it up. But the problem is the court made the decision on total sustainable yield months before hearing evidence on phase 3 trial. That really bothers us. And he compared the ruling on overdraft was compared to conditions prior to those in 1951. I feel that the basin's been filling up with water, and I told Phyllis Shannon this, for about 40 years, since the early 70s. And a technical analysis, I was involved in the Adjudication Technical Committee, it's horribly, horribly flawed. And they use data in there to support their low yield. With numbers I gave them, I put together some crop water requirements with Grant, I can't remember his last name. He was the farm advisor at that time, Grant Peel. And I told them they were wrong, that we went to the University of California, Davis, and readjusted them. But these people use those numbers, so that's it's something to really worry about. Now, that's what made people really seriously mad at being cut back. Now, the interesting thing is from Angie Lauer, who's associate professor of microbiology at Cal State University in Bakersfield. I've talked a lot about that, and she looks into this microbe in the ground. She said, and this is good news for Mr. Van Dam, is the valley fever fungus does not like fertilizers and pesticides, and it does not compete well with existing microbes in agricultural land that are very healthy. These microbes from valley fever fungus are not very hardy and not compete very well. And of course it likes soils with soluble salts, which is a really bad thing for agriculture. The economics, Dr. Mark Schnepp, who's involved with the Anderson School of Management at UCLA, he's not on their faculty, but he's involved with them, came out years ago with what the effect that these numbers were going to have on the economics of the valley. And it was really, really very depressing. And it looks like if we can't do something about getting an honest, safe yield, we're throwing away over $100 billion of water by one stroke of the pen by the judge. And I think it's really great that this board tried to get a low number for replacement water. But nevertheless, if you look at that number and figure that you also have the cost of pumping it out of the ground, that's still going to increase these guys' costs by about a factor of 9. And you can easily see that. And if you see the property values out there, by gosh, if you don't have water rights, you don't have any value. These realtors here hardly ever want to talk to you unless you have water rights. And then, of course, the other thing that's really bad, valley fever diagnosis and treatment is very, very expensive. And fortunately, most of those cases don't get very bad. But if you get a bad condition, it's very unpleasant and very difficult. Now, I look at the types of analysis as traditional and the best available science. The numbers that went into the Adjudication Technical Committee are traditional. It's not the best available science. I don't think these guys that did it knew what the best available science was. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, here's something kind of interesting, and a lot of you have seen this before. This is a view these guys did, and I'll introduce you to it, of the state of New Mexico. And this is done from satellite, land site surveys, satellite surveys. And the newer work, this is done about 2 years ago, the newer work is much more detailed. But nevertheless, you can see how detailed this is. The green spots show the recharge area. The red spots show it's very hard to recharge. And as you may guess, the cities there are reasonably close to the green area so that you get water. I think to evaluate the safe yield, we need to focus on up-to-date scientific methods such as satellite imagery with energy balance. They can do an energy balance right at the surface. And it does not, the thing that's really interesting is it does not rely on temporal or area averages. Like, for instance, I give you an example. You know, let's say you have a mountain like this. It's kind of intuitive that you're going to get more recharge from the shadow areas than you are from the areas that look right at the sun. And then in terms of area, if you look at your mountain again, you're going to get more recharge in the area, or the temporal arguments I'm talking about now. You get more recharge if you have some way of capturing all the water that comes down. The traditional efforts just look at averages, you know, so they essentially miss a lot of water. So the bottom line, the new techniques that they're using all in the Southwest can look at and pick up a lot more water. Now, who can reevaluate it? I've proposed, as you know, that Phyllis Stan and Todd Groundwater, I've been very impressed with Phyllis Stan and so forth, will work with the Science Advisory Board considering these folks up there. Now, Rick Allen is University of Idaho. He's a very interesting person. He's given expert testimony to the United States Supreme Court at least on 2 occasions, maybe more. And he's got a contract now to figure out what the evapotranspiration is. In other words, the water that's coming up from the soil in the plant, all over the planet, all over the planet. And John Hendricks is he's an interesting guy. He speaks 6 languages and is very versed in evapotranspiration also. And Alex Reinhardt, he specializes in storage calculus. Storage, the valley gains or loses in a year. Now, he comes from a state, New Mexico, that all our water comes from the ground. So this is very, very important. They have very little, if no imported water. Todd Unstadt is a computer expert. He can look at somebody's computer model and just automatically smell whether it's rotten or not. And I can tell you the groundwater adjudication lawsuit, there was a lot of bad odors. John Wilson is the expert on mountain front recharge. And as probably most of you know, most of the recharge in the valley comes from the Tehachapi's and San Gabriel's Mountain. He's probably the world's leading expert in this stuff. And so I'm suggesting I've talked to all these guys and they're happy to get involved in it, either to do some work or to help Phyllis Stan. One of the reasons I want to do this, I think this is important. I really want to get to the end of this adjudication and get honest numbers down as soon as we can. And I don't want to mess around with all this stuff. And I think if we involve these guys, we can get to the bottom line and satisfy people in a very efficient manner. Most of these guys, not all of them, are semi-retired or have fellowship, so I don't think it's going to be too expensive. Now, how to incorporate an increase in native yield into the adjudication? I think we need to be as consistent with the judgment as possible. And so this section here gives everybody water rights, but also gives them a percentage of native yield. So if we can justify to the judge to increase the native yield, everybody goes up according to their percentage. So we don't have to fight that out. And the reason why we really need to act soon is we're creating a groundwater drought in Antelope Valley that does not exist. You know, we have a drought all over California, you know, the imported water is a drought, but not our groundwater. We're throwing away huge amounts of water, over 100,000 acre-feet a year. And we're throwing away value of water that's probably over 100 billion. Now, these numbers are not mine. These numbers have been published by these experts. And actually, we're making water prices skyrocket. Like, I think it's really great that you guys got a fairly low amount of replacement water. I think it's like $4.15 an acre foot or something like that, $415 an acre foot on the bigger. And but if you put on the cost of water it takes to get water out of the ground now, and add to that, it's a simple calculation to indicate that the water costs for these folks that need replacement water that are pumping out of the ground now, their costs are going to go up 9 times. And then we're going to be creating significant health and public safety conditions, like I mentioned in adjudication before. And see, these experts figure there may be 15 deaths. I don't mean 15 deaths total, but 15 deaths per year. It's a huge problem, and there's not many people that are really stuck and moving into it. And so I wish you guys would consider that we've got a real emergency now. And I recommend AVEK or yourselves personally petition the Watermaster to file a motion with the court to get rid of the 17-year restriction and reevaluate the yield by the best available science today. And in thinking about all this, I wish you would please consider the bottom line. We are throwing away over 100,000 acre-feet of water, thereby throwing away $1 billion of value, making water costs skyrocket, reducing many property values around the valley to zero, creating 30,000 acres more of blowing dust and sand, in addition to the 20,000 acres we have now. And it'll add to traffic accidents, respiratory illnesses from the PM 2.5 and the small particles, and valley fever, which will also create illnesses and a considerable number of deaths per year. I really want to get through with this thing, and I would really support you guys if you need more information. I can give it to you, or I can tell you these experts to talk. But I think it's appropriate as an outstanding water agency in the valley that you guys get involved and decide really what you want to do. And so I'd like to turn the meeting back over to Keith, and I appreciate your time very much.
Gene, can I ask you a question? Early in your presentation, you indicated that an outside university was doing some work in revegetation in the Antelope Valley?
Yes, well, we've got somebody on our scoping committee that I think you know very well, Rich Campbell, and he's working with the people at the University of California at Riverside. They've got a department that's interested in this. They've been in many of our scoping meetings, and so they're working on that. But the thing is, that's a tricky thing. I think they've had some real good experience in a couple of areas, and he can talk more to that than I can. But it really helps if you have a rainy year. And if we don't have a rainy year, it's much more of a challenge. the University of California, Riverside.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Gene?
Yeah, I have a few questions.
Would you like to ask a personal question?
No, I think what I want to say is when I first got on AVEK, you were the first person to contact me, and we met, and you started my water education, and I want to thank you for that. And you've continued it up till now, so we tease a lot, but I have incredible respect for you and for what you have just told us. A statement to you, and I think we talked about this before, this whole board, our number one strategic goal is to make sure that the basin is kept safe and not overcrowded. So coming from that, I think that we have to be careful in rushing to reevaluate the safe field. But with that said, I think we need to do it as soon as we can. I think 17 years is too long. And as one of the members of the Watermaster Board, I've made that statement many times. But until we really know what the safe field is, I think it's premature to rush out and try to change the adjudication judgment. It took us 17 years to get it, and we need to wait until Phyllis has the time to study the basin with whatever experts she feels are necessary to get to this point. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree to that. In fact, I'm going to try to get it on a conference call with a few of those experts in the next month.
That'd be great. And I'd be very supportive of that. And just to let you know, a few things that this board has been working on and the Antelope Valley State Water Contractors have been working on is we've had meetings with sanitation. We're working closely with them and Palmer Water District and Little Rock Irrigation District to see if we can start using the tertiary water that is now being evaporating or just being thrown away to be used for some of our farmers in areas where we have depression to start healing the basin. Our state senator, along with many of us, are working really hard to get an industrial hemp bill passed, which is a crop that could revolutionize this whole valley. And you and I have had discussions about that. It's a crop that takes about 2 to 2.5 acre feet of water to grow versus 7 acre feet of water per acre for alfalfa. And that is one solution. And then what we've talked about a lot and what our whole board has worked towards, we are very supportive of our farming community. And this board has worked real hard to do whatever it's necessary to keep our farmers in business. And a commitment that I'll give to you is that's something I certainly will continue doing. But rushing into trying to look at the safe yield and reevaluating it and raising it, I don't think that's the answer. I think we have to be patient. I think we have to be scientific, and we have to do it in a way that we can ensure ourselves that we're not harming the space. Do you agree with that?
Well, I agree with that, with a caveat, and that is the calculation on the Adjudication Technical Committee that I was a part of is horrible, awful. And just from the data you have then, back then, and apply it now in an honest, technically correct way, I think would show we have a lot more water. Plus you have these new processes that are coming in that can do that. Let me give you one example. When I was on the Adjudication Technical Committee, there wasn't any data for how much different crops used in Antelope Valley. And so I worked with Grant Poole, the farm advisor here, and we came up with some preliminary numbers. And I gave those to the technical committee, and I said, these are no good, but these are our first numbers. And they used it. And when the people from the University of California put together some good numbers that I incorporated, the technical committee, you can see from the summary expert thing, would refuse to accept it. So there's a lot of snarky things that went on. You're familiar with that word, aren't you?
That's a pretty good word to use. Gene, as one member of the Watermaster Board, I'm committed to get this right. I think we have a really passionate Watermaster engineer that I have a great deal of trust in. We did a as a board, did a wonderful job choosing somebody with that passion. And I think that when the time comes and Phyllis feels the time is there, she's going to have a whole board supporting her to do that.
Right.
But I really appreciate you going out to the community and giving this information. I think it's incredibly important. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words, and I agree with what you say. When we make this change, we need to make it correctly, and when we make this change, we may need to make it with a firm foundation. And thank you very much.
Gene, thank you, Gene.
Gene, I had one question for you. I don't think the judge has ever considered the lower aquifer. We pump out of the lower aquifer, and there's a lot of farmers that are down 1,200 feet with our wells, and Judge Kumar never took that lower aquifer into consideration.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I was on the technical committee, as you know, I hate to keep saying that, but I watched almost all of the hearings, and the judge didn't want to, it seemed like he didn't want to hear anything like that. He just wanted to be, he was driven to accept this 110,000 acre feet a year, and the hell with this other stuff. I mean, we could have got him down and beat him on the dais, and he wouldn't have given a damn about valley fever. And so now we've got all these open scars, and how do we cure them? That's what we need to work together, and your issue is one of many, and I agree with what you said.
Right, and I think that's a good point to file a motion on, is to consider the lower aquifer pumping, being that it's not being overdrawn because it was never based on that.
Well, I certainly don't agree, I do not disagree with you one iota. My approach now is to make the changes as consistent now with the judgment as we can, to minimize any hassle or fighting or spending money. And so I agree with you, I think that's an important issue for the future. But I would prefer to make these obvious changes as quick as we can, and then keep those in our hip pocket and say, damn it, we also need to look at this. That's my approach. But I don't disagree with you at all, Gary.
Thank you for your hard work.
I have one comment. When this thing all went down, over the 18 years we've been involved with it, one of my goals has been, from the beginning, when the judgment came down, is for AVEK to work aggressively to store as much water as we possibly can in these banks, to raise the tables and try to cut the time of the judgment in half, to revisit it with USGS and our consultants to see if we can raise that 110 to 125, 130,000 acre feet. I mean, that's what we can do here, besides supporting what you're talking about. But what we can do real time is that we, as a board, have a mechanism we're in place right now to build this bank that's going to supply, put it in between 250 and 500,000 acre feet of water. I believe we're going to accomplish that 500,000 acre feet of water within the next less than 10 years. I mean, God forbid we don't have 5 years of drought, but our staff, our management is geared up to put more water in the ground. I think we have that behind us. I believe we have a good case, besides the other things we hear, to actually prove to the judge that it's time to raise the limits.
Well, I think I would support you on that, again, with one small caveat. When you do the banking, and I think fundamentally that's a good concept, but when you do that, you need to do it intelligently, and I'm not inferring that you're not, but you need to pay attention to State Water Resources Control Board Resolution 6816, and you need to realize that the Watermaster engineer may not support 10% leave behind. It may be a little higher than that. So with those two caveats, I would encourage you to push ahead. In other
That's-
words, do
that's-
it right, Frank, if you're gonna do it.
No,
I'm not saying you're not doing it.
I know, but it's funny you said that, because I am, how can I say it, I've suggested to our management that some of our negotiations leave-behinds should be 15%. But, you know, depending on, you know, who the players are involved. So, well, we got some good things happening here in the next year, I believe, that's gonna help open some eyes up here in the Antelope Valley. And there has not been a consultant that has touched the Antelope Valley ground that's more knowledgeable than what we've had here, all the way to the federal government. And they're watching what we're doing, and they're, of course, you know, working with our Watermaster engineer. So we're doing everything not just by the book, but we're even doing more with our storage. We stored 170,000 acre-feet of water. Nobody thought that ever happened. We did it in such a short period of time. And I'm telling you, we're going to double that, maybe triple that in the next 5 to 6 years. So that's what we're going to do. And then what you're doing from the other end, it will all come together, and I believe we can convince the judge to raise that table.
Right. And I think that's really good. The thing I'm trying to do is I realize how much the valley is suffering right at this minute. You know, with the ramp downs, you know, and I, as a farmer, I look at other farmers around here and I say, these people have put their life savings into this organization and this business they're doing, not to mention the small pumpers. And you know, real estate people don't want to sell all land because there's no value in it. And they're telling around, if you ever talk to real estate people, talk to them, but they'll tell you if you don't have water rights, you don't have any value. And so I would like to change that because I think there's too much harm. And I think the citizens of this valley, and a lot of this, and I know a lot of you folks have been around here for a long time, I think we have a duty to the community and the citizens to do what's on us. And this adjudication out there now has an odor to it. It has a really bad odor to it. So I support what you guys are saying. Any other questions?
Yeah, one comment, Gene, on growing alfalfa, I think people don't realize that about the most you can pay is $200 an acre foot for water. Like you said, it costs $100 an acre foot to pump it out of the ground. So if you bought the water for $100 an acre foot, there's your $200 an acre foot with your pumping cost. So there's, nobody buys AVEK water to farm with.
Well, that's right. And see, the example I made to support that, I said, look, if you guys are charging, and I appreciate you charging the low rate of $415 an acre foot. Right now, let's say if you don't sprinkle irrigate, you just flood irrigate, it costs you about $50 or maybe a little more to pump it out of the ground. If you have to do that and then pay these replenishment costs, it knocks it up. And if you divide the two numbers, you get that the increase is 9 times. And agriculture, we alfalfa growing can't do that. That's why you see, that's exactly what you said, and I just use different numbers. Well, you know, if I can help you guys, please let me know. I support what you're doing, and please call me or email me, and I'll be very happy to help you the way I can. Any other questions?
I have a comment also.
Oh, sure.
Just like to thank you for your coming and bringing all that good information that you brought. And it sounds like you've already been talking with Phyllis Stanton and Todd Groundwater. So I feel like if you continue that communication with it, that between, you know, in time with and working with the Watermaster board, we should be able to come to some kind of a better solution.
Well, thank you very much for your kind words. Can I tell you one joke about Phyllis very quickly? Phyllis has a very strong South Carolina accent. And so the second time I tried to call her on the phone, the receptionist answered. And I said, is Phyllis there? And she said, no, she's not. And I said, and the lady said she's on vacation. And I said, I bet she's down in South Carolina hauling moonshine, because that's what people do in South Carolina. And so when Phyllis called me back, she said, "What's this stuff about moonshine?" And I said, "Phyllis, I said that because I wanted you to call me back." And she said, "Boy, you got that right." So let me know if I can be any help.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gene.
Thanks to you.
How are you? How's it going?
Items 5B, C, D, and E are all resolutions declaring no need for elections, requesting Board of Supervisors to appoint nominee Shelley Sorsabal, Keith Dias, Frank Donato, and Robert Perris. And we can consider these resolutions individually or vote once to approve them all.
I'd rather do them individually because. Certainly. I'd like to move approval of resolution number R1898.
I'll second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved.
And I'd like to move for approval of the next board order, 5C, resolution R1899.
Second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved.
I'd like to move on resolution number R18-100 for
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
And I'd like to move on board order 55E,
Second.
resolution R18-101.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Item 6A, consideration and possible action on the minutes of the board's meeting of July 10th, 2018.
I'll move on it.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the minutes?
I'll be abstaining because I was not present in that meeting.
Okay, I will too.
2 abstentions. And we need a unanimous vote of the record present. Yeah. Okay, should we take a roll call vote, Colin?
Shelley Sorsabal,
I'm abstaining.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Justin Lane is not present, Robert Perris,
I'm abstaining.
Marlon Barnes,
Yes.
and Gary Bettman.
Yes.
Carried, thank you. Item 7A, Finance Committee, Chairman Donato, do you have a report?
Yes. Finance Committee met yesterday. We went through the check registry, which is in your agendas. And is everything, can you come over that?
Yes,
There's some item-
there was a question about three of the checks that were in the check registry. The two, one was signs of designs, and it was associated with signage for the laboratory and our Wi-Fi signs that are located throughout the building, and let the public know what the Wi-Fi password is. The other was Rothman Interiors, and that was a purchase order for additional seating for this building, and then also partial payment on some work that's being done as far as for this building to help with some of the sound attenuation that we need in the hallway. And so that work is currently ongoing. There's a second payment that'll be coming with that work.
Excuse me, why is Rothman getting involved with that?
Because they were the contractor that did the majority of all the work in the building. And so this was an added they were the selected contractor by Cal Construction. And so we just extended there to get the same product line that we had with.
But they had something to do with the sound system?
No. There's, what I mean is there's a sound issue in the hallway.
Oh, so they
So
put some kind of
we're
weird.
putting some fabric type material within there to kind of
Okay.
absorb some of the sound.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. So that's really the work that they're doing for. It's just a continuation of some of the work that they were contracted to through Cal Construction, which was, they were a substitute prime contractor.
Will that help with, when you hear people walking in the hallway?
That's the idea.
Okay,
That's it.
idea. Did it work?
Well, we haven't got it complete yet. When we get it complete, we'll find out. So I was hesitant to tell you yes. In the third item, it had to do with Kennedy Jakes, and we pulled that one and we'll come back to the finance committee and go forward.
Okay, so I'm going to move on board 781. That was we approved the check registries minus the one that Dwayne just discussed. Do you know what the number of that is?
I don't, it was the one for Kennedy Jakes. I think Matt
It's
may have it.
75334.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Any more discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
Okay, the second item is the treasurer's report regarding consideration cost of action for the treasurer's report for the month ending July 31st, 2018. And I'll move on that board 782, so we approved it.
Second.
Any more discussion?
I do have a discussion. I want to point out some things. Teresa does a really good job putting our items in the agenda and organizing that's very legible. One of the things I want to point out, our interest rates is up to 1.8, and we're almost hitting 2%. I don't remember the last time we hit 2%. It's probably been about
Been a long
a
time.
long time. So, doing good. We got good cash reserves, we got good water reserves, and we're paying off bonds, so we're going in the right direction.
Any more discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Item 7B, Adjudication and Watermaster Committee, City Chairman Harris.
Thank you. We had our meeting on August 22nd. Our next meeting's going to be September 26th. On our 22nd meeting, we approved some new wells, and we also approved some water transfers. It was a very uneventful meeting. I think that's because Richard was there, not Adam, but other than that, we're coming together as a team. We're bonding well, and we're getting the meetings moving quickly as they should. So, if you were listening to it, I think we're making a lot of progress.
Yeah, we
That's
are.
about 55 minutes, actually.
Oh,
So, that's my report. Any questions?
When was the next meeting, Rob?
Next meeting is going to be September 26th. And we don't need any guidance yet because we don't have an agenda for that meeting. So, that's the end of my report.
Did the advisory board, when was their meeting?
I don't have the date of the advisory board.
Okay. Don't have it off the top of my head.
Usually the week before.
Week before.
Okay.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Item 7C, Water Bank.
LLC is granting an easement to AVEK for a temporary construction easement as well as a permanent pipeline easement. And this is associated with the Upper Amazon recharge project. If you recall, as part of that agreement, It's a cooperative agreement between the City of Palmdale, AVEK, LA County Waterworks, and Palmdale Water District. So in that agreement, AVEK will own and operate the pipeline that conveys water from the East Branch of State Water Project to the new recharge basin. And the granting of this easement is to allow AVEK access along that pipeline to operate and maintain the pipeline. So there's no cost associated with this. The city has worked out this arrangement with the property owner in this area, and they're granting this easement to AVEK at no cost.
And I had a question during the committee meeting. Two questions. One was, is this pipeline easement running on that road I was discussing?
Yeah, I looked it up. It is, I believe it's called City Ranch Road.
Yeah.
Or there's also referred to like 28th Street or something, but more commonly City Ranch Road from Lake Elizabeth up to the State Water Project, and there's a small bridge there that crosses the State Water Project. So this easement follows that existing road.
You know, I also would, I mean, it doesn't have nothing to do with the motion, but I want to bring it up anyway, because it does have to do with public health and safety. There has to be some way to put that barrier back up, because people from Antelope that live in those houses are taking shortcuts through the field, and they're driving down the state, I think the state easement there too, isn't it?
Correct.
The road?
Access to the state.
Yeah, so they're gonna do something to stop those cars from going in and, you know, causing any kind of damage, you know.
Yeah, maybe when the project's done, we can put some
Okay.
data in there. There's a couple of exhibits attached to the easement document that show the location.
So there's a
And,
map. Map of the back.
It's page 49 of 76 of the packet. And we had Ben Horn review the legal description and exhibits to make sure that they're accurate.
Okay, are there any more questions or discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
Okay, it brings us to C2, consideration possible action on the Palmdale AVEK Water Exchange Agreement. I move on this board order 7C2.
I second that motion.
Any questions or discussion?
Yeah, I have one. Explain that exchange agreement again.
Okay, I can explain this a little bit. So this is what's called a balanced one-for-one exchange. This will be between Palmdale Water District and AVEK. So in 2018, Palmdale Water District has a little bit of excess water that they currently don't have a home for. There's, you know, it's, they're meeting all of their current demands, and you have no place to bank this water. So they have 5,000 acre feet available in 2018 to them. So what this agreement would allow is they would transfer that 5,000 acre feet to AVEK this year, and we could put it to beneficial use. And then over the next 10 years, we're required to use a portion of our table lake water and return that same quantity to AVEK, or to Palmdale, at no cost. So there's no financial monies exchanged between the two parties. Palmdale would also be responsible for paying the transportation charges to get the water back when it's returned to Palmdale Water District. What this allows Palmdale to do is kind of defer the delivery of that 5,000 acre feet. As I mentioned, they currently don't have a need for that amount of water this year, and by deferring it over the next 10 years, they have some more flexibility in future years, maybe when they have a place to bank it, or they have the demand and need for it, it can be delivered at that time and be put to use. Otherwise, they could potentially lose that amount of water this
So
year.
we're banking it for them.
Yeah, it's almost like a banking agreement in a way.
And also explain that, you know, the question I asked is, why don't they put it in San Luis Reservoir? That's only good for 1 year. So basically, I mean, we're working, it's really a good deal for both of us, because we have use for that water, they don't have use for the water, and we can pay it over 10 years, and they don't have to worry about losing the water.
Correct. And as you know, we have the common landowner transfers that we're currently working on this year. There's two of them, one with Homer and one with Five Lions LLC. And Five Lions has requested the need, or requested about 5,000 more acre feet than what we were willing or able to provide. So this transfer or exchange allows us to provide that additional 5,000 to Five Lions. So it's a win-win. I mean, we're able to satisfy the need through the common landowner transfer, and this gives Palmdale a little bit of opportunity to bank some water for a future year.
Gary, to follow up with that, in the Antelope Valley State Water Contractors, we have an ad hoc committee that's been working really hard at how we can all work together with Palmdale and Little Rock irrigation, and how we can use our water collectively for the benefit of the whole valley. And this was one of those win-win situations. So, and doesn't cost us anything, gives us more flexibility, and starts us on a way of cooperating, working together with them. So I think it's fantastic we're doing it. I know we're working on another project with Little Rock that I hope we can bring forward soon, and work forward on that project too. So good stuff's happening in the Antelope Valley State Water Contractors.
Right, we're gonna pick up, what, 3,000 acre feet when the sediment comes out of Little Rock Reservoir?
I don't, not we, but Palmdale Water District's going to have more storage there, so
Right.
yeah, which will be real good for the valley.
Okay.
So and we have to start thinking regionally, and I think we have to start thinking that all of the Antelope Valley State Water Contractors, Palmdale, Little Rock, AVEK are in this together, especially with adjudication now. And the more we can work together, cooperate, and help each other, I think it builds a lot of trust, and it's better for our citizens and our taxpayers.
I agree.
Any more discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
Okay, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Item 7D, Planning Committee regarding the Antelope Valley State Water Contractors Association budget. Rob?
Sure. If I could move that over to Dwayne to go through for us.
And I'm going to punt over to Matt, that's, by the way, is the general manager of the AV Water Contractors Association.
I think that's great. I just didn't want to delegate over to you.
I understand.
Thank you.
I'm at the end of the rope, so.
Well, Holly's next to you.
So what this item is staff is recommending the board approve resolution 18-102 to approve the 2018-2019 Antelope Valley State Water Contractors Association budget. In the bylaws for the association, which as you know we're a party to, it states in there that once the association approves their operating budget, that has to go back to each of the member agencies, and each member agency has to pass a resolution to support that budget, to show that all three member agencies are committed to those funds. So in July, the association met, and the commissioners recommended and approved the 2018-2019 budget, which includes $10,000 from each of the three member agencies for general operating expenses, and then a total of $31,800 for the association's participation in the USGS program. So as you recall, historically the association has picked up all the costs associated with the USGS program. But this year was the first year that we were able to start splitting that cost up amongst various agencies. So the association is picking up 50% of the USGS costs, 25% is through the Watermaster, and the remaining 25% is through the Irwin group, the Antelope Valley Integrated Regional Water Management Group, because all three of those organizations benefit from the data collected by the USGS. So this is kind of one step into moving to hopefully someday having the Watermaster do all the monitoring for the groundwater levels. So this is a good step. So as I mentioned, the association approved the budget, AVEK's contribution would be total of $37,253 for 2018-2019 budget. So staff and commissioners that represent AVEK are recommending the board approve this resolution.
Okay.
And just for reference, we were in the $68,000 to $75,000 range in previous years.
And that was primarily due to the USGS cost.
Yes. Okay, I move on board 17-1, that for the amount of $37,253.
Second.
I do have a question.
I have a question.
No, you go first.
The question I have is, so what is USGS's role in this year? Why is it their cost included?
USGS's role this year is the same as it has been in the past, and that's to monitor roughly 200 groundwater wells in the valley. They collect 2 times a year level, and then also there's a handful of wells that are collected for water quality. So that program is going to remain the same.
Without the cost?
But, I'm sorry, what?
Without the cost?
That's included, so our cost will cover that participation.
It's included. Okay, so, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
Okay.
We were just able to get other organizations to contribute some of the costs, and that's why AVEK's costs have gone down.
I have a request. I would like to see a journal of the last 10 years. We're spending all this money, and you said 2 things, water quality, and we're measuring the depth of the wells. So there's, production wells that they're looking at 200. And if we get if we continue to do this, this is going to be a measuring tool that we're going to be able to present to the judge, or first the water engineer. And I never see this stuff. You know, we spend a lot of money, but we don't have a book or a graph showing what's.
Yeah, you know what we could do is, I'm sure they'd be happy to come into the board here, is the USGS could come in and give a demonstration of the online tool that they're using. You know, the last couple of years, we paid for an interactive map to go on and access all of the data that they've been collecting.
Right, but where's our copy? So the Watermaster has a copy, we have a copy, the state water contractors have a copy, because it's like we're doing this work and it's an unknown how we're benefiting or succeeding, and really have the real answers. And so I think that should be done. And then Mr. Nebeker, made a comment, we can use those tools to go back to the judge. I mean,
Yeah.
it's facts speak for themselves. So that's what we need something like that.
Okay.
Okay, Frank, Gene's retired now, he might want to put it together for us. Yeah, that number's good. So, yeah, let's make sure, just keep that in mind when you're, who orders?
I will add that the basis for much of the annual reports that are put out by the Watermaster, but for much of the information that is utilized comes from the USGS information to provide those contour lines that show the difference in elevation, and she does a calculation based on that. So it'd be very easy for us to get a historical record of all that raw data that we can utilize.
I think Frank has a good point, whether we're going to cone and depression in certain areas, or, we're not overdrafting the basin in other areas.
Well, that was the whole thing. I said, now, we control, say we, the Antelope Valley people control that report. And we need to tell them what wells we want monitored in what specific areas, what Gary said is very important.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what, every year certain areas will have those wells listed. And if you do it correctly, you're going to have a pretty good idea what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've connected USGS and Phyllis to talk about just that. So Phyllis has already provided input to the USGS to kind of look long-term of making adjustments to the monitoring program.
It's also going to help AVEK, because maybe some years with our water banking, expansion. We're gonna go to the east side, so who knows some of the other areas.
Right.
Maybe we can put some more water in certain areas that can help lift that up a little bit. So this would be a good idea right now, starting in 2018, to get that done.
The basis for it too is it'll give us a graphical demonstration of the good, the positive that all the recharging is doing in the groundwater basin.
Right, well, I'd like to make one comment also. Are we going to stay with the 200 wells that we've been using, or are we increasing that number, or where are we at there? Because we're kind of in the dark on that also.
Well, there's a historical program of the 200 wells, and so we want to maintain that level of record. And I think Phyllis is looking at additional locations that would be appropriate for her to have a better change in elevation and groundwater level, where she needs a couple of key results in certain areas.
At the end of the day, it's the Watermaster who makes that decision, so
Exactly.
they better be listening to them, and, not anybody else.
Right.
Basically.
I mean, that's a technical exercise.
Any more discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved? Anything else, Rob? Thank you very much.
End of my report.
Item 8A, construction report. Who will be?
Yes, Matt Knudsen, our Assistant General Manager, has taken on the task of making sure our construction program is going as it should be, with Virgil's absence, until we hire our new engineering manager, and I'd like to give him an opportunity to provide this report.
All right, good evening again. The first item, 8A1, Cal City Construction, which is this new operations center, as well as our laboratory. We're in the 11th hour of this contract. We met with the contractor to go through some final punch list items that are remaining. Probably one of the bigger one is our chiller was having some programming issues for our HVAC system, and our operations manager, Mr. Bazigan, was very helpful in getting that resolved. And I have to report that the item was corrected today by Cal City and their subcontractor. So we just have a couple of remaining paperwork items, I'll call them, like as-built drawings and some Title 24 compliance paperwork. And then we're also working through a final change order to close this project out. So hopefully at the next meeting, we'll be presenting both the final change order that we're working on, as well as the recommendation to file the notice of completion for this building. So that's good news there. Same thing go along with the this new building. We separated out the low voltage wiring contract, and the Finance Committee yesterday approved Telpro, and we're kind of in the same situation. We're hoping at the next board meeting we'll be recommending to file the notice of completion for that project, as well as they've completed all the punch list items. And then lastly, on A3, we've made a lot of progress on the solar project. We have both the east side 1 megawatt unit, and just this week, the west side 1 megawatt unit are now energized by Edison. So those will be generating power here shortly, if not already. And then the larger 3 megawatt unit on the west side is scheduled for 2 weeks out to be energized by Edison. So if all goes well, by end of September, all 3 sites will be active and generating power. And then we'll start the O&M period with our contractor. We have a 3-year contract with them to operate and maintain the solar facilities. And then also that will start the performance guarantee measurements. So we'll be, hopefully at the next meeting, we're going to come back and give a presentation to the board on what that looks like. Part of the contract is for them to provide us regular reports to show that we're actually saving the amount per the contract. So we'll have some reports to share with the board at the next meeting, just to go through and show the board what those are going to look like. So good news on the solar front. And that's all I have to report, unless there are any questions from them.
Thank you very much. Okay. Item 8B, General Manager's Report.
Thank you very much, Board President, members of the board. This is the Board of Directors General Manager's Report for August 28, 2018. You can, over here, you can see the temperatures. We have a sunny, warm forecast, and you can see how it's kind of changing with time. Relatively mild temperatures are forecasted in the Feather Basin system. You can see how this is going. So precipitation, we're looking at a normal initial situation. There's no precipitation coming because it's normal not to have any rain this time of year. And you can see the longer forecast shows that there's some little rain in the northwest, but not much coming our way. And then it looks like there's equal chances for the longer forecast period. So you can see that doesn't look like much opportunity for rain in the next few months. Here's our Northern Sierra precipitation. You can see we're at 40.9, same as 2 weeks ago, and I imagine it'll be that way for the most part for the rest of the water year, which our water year ends October 1st. We start a new water year. You can see here is the reservoir level in the Lake Orville, and you can see that they're going move the water level down. It's part of the construction activities that are necessary to complete both the emergency and regular dam spill. We're right on average for San Luis, which is kind of a good thing as far as being in this part of the year. It's very good to see that. Our reservoir levels are artificially low in Orville. The rest of the reservoirs are right at average levels. Everything's working pretty much as planned during this current year. We're still at 35%, and that we've had 38,700 acre-feet of deliveries into our service areas through August. Looking at the plant flows, this is our conventional treatment. We have current flows 48 million gallons a day coming through the Quartz Hill plant. We got 2.6 going through the East Side Water Plant, and Acton still 2.4. As you can see, these are, if you add the totals up, you got 53 million gallons a day of flow at this particular point, whereas last year we're at 41, so that's a little more than what we were at that time. The geopurification treatment processes that we're going through right now, you can see our current flow on the east side is about 1.9 million gallons a day, very consistent with that last year's flow. West side water bank totals at 10 million gallons a day, and that's split between the north and the south. You can see we need about 2 million gallons a day just to keep that line fresh and the water bank soft. So our geopurification, which is primarily a water quality aspect of the service that we provide to the system, is very consistent with last year's flows. If we look at total treated water deliveries, you can see that from conventional you got 53 and 12, so we're at 65 million gallons a day if you add the geopurification of the conventional amounts. Last year we were at 51. So this long hot winter, or hot summer I should say, has helped our water sales to a certain amount. Water banking, we don't have much banking going on at the present time. You can see the High Desert Water Bank is off. We have a little going to the east side, nothing on the west side, and that's in large part due to some maintenance work that we're doing on the pipeline structure on the west side. We did it, the screening structure was actually repaired, and that work was done, and that was done during the heat of the summer, because that's the least beneficial time to be banking because of the evaporation zones. And then in the high desert water bank, there was some pumping issues with Tahone that we had to take that offline for a short period of time. Water quality, we had a real bout this summer with algae and other thick materials coming through the plant. That's rectified itself, and we're finding very, very consistent results. We're still getting some grass debris, but we're able to screen that out fairly effectively. And we have taken our compliance samples, were collected on August 16th. We expect the results back the next week. But preliminary results show that things look really, really good. The kind of status and updates, we have the State Water Contractors Association meeting Thursday, September 13th, and the AV Watermaster board meeting on September 29th. My schedule is I plan to be here except for one day at the end of September to go to the State Water Contractors meeting. I did want to let the board know that we received this fine plaque. Get it out. From the American Water Works Association. Here, it appears that AVEK has been a member of the American Water Works Association for 50 years, so they provided this plaque to us as a commemoration of our support over that 50-year period. We would like to display that in our lobby along with some of the other things that we'll have. Other than that, that's all I have as far as the general manager's report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Dwayne? Thank you very much. Item 9, Director's report. Rob?
Just wanted to thank all of you for those who went to the fair, and if you saw our conservation garden, we got the first phase in record time. We had our mural up that said Water Conservation Garden provided by AVEK, Hondo Water District, and Little Rock Creek. So we're going in the right direction. Next year, there will be a larger area that will be part of the conservation garden. And we'll move our banner over to a much more visible area. And so the fair is very happy that we're participating, and I think it's really good for the public. So thank all of you for voting on that and providing that to our community.
Marlon? Shelley?
I just wanted to say I also went to the fair and saw the conservation area that we contributed towards, and I think it'll be very beneficial for the community for them to see what the different native plants are and to help them with their gardening needs and trying to keep water conservation going. So thank you everyone. It looks really good. If you haven't had the chance to go look, you might want to.
Frank?
Nothing.
Gary?
Same thing, Antelope Valley Fair, and thank you towards Little Rock, Palmdale, and AVEK for all participating in the soil conservation for the fair. Look forward to helping with the Rural Museum that's going to be built this year. It's going to be a 10,000 square foot building, and hopefully we can do something there also. So, thank you.
Item 10, Attorney's report, please. No report. Item 11, old business, closed session. Dwayne, is there a reason to go into closed session?
Yes, there is item B and D.
All right, do I have a motion?
I move we go into closed session.
Second. Ladies first.
Closed session. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? All right, we'll go into closed session in about 5 minutes.